Alright, so back here on the 1978 Toyota pickup, and just wanted to give sort of like a, I don't know, parental advisory on why things just take way, way longer than you'd ever think. So, been working on the fuel system, and, seems straightforward and simple enough. Like, run some lines off of the tank, run them along the frame rail, go in the engine, easy peasy. But so, been working through this, and custom crap, and you run into problems. So, I was going to run the lines inside of the frame rail. So, I was going to come over the top of this cross member, go down. I showed before, like the 90s that I'm going to use, and then run it all the way down the inside of the frame rail. But you start looking through here, you got this cross member for the shock mounts, you got the panhard bar mount, then the 4-link, it's the entire width of the frame. So I'd either have to go up over the top of it or down below. And then I got another cross member here, another one, another one, another one. It's just, there's just everything in the way. It's a nightmare. So scrap that. Now going on the outside of the frame rail, but still had to do some customization. So this is the stock bed mount, and you see it has this wall on the side of it. And that wall on the side of it, again, you're trying to run line across there, that's going to be in the way. So replace this one with just a piece of 1/4-inch angle iron. Weld it all the way around. I'm not going to bother to gusset it. That's 1/4-inch. This is 1/8 inch, so twice as thick. And it's just holding the bed in place, so I'm not worried about that. I'll have the other mounts that are in between it, so no big deal. Same thing on this one. So ended up replacing that with a piece of angle. And so those two had to get cut out, ground smooth, measure up the angle, get all that stuff lined up, make it. That takes time. This one here also had to do some modifications. So the whole bottom piece of it, it came all the way down to here previously, and had to cut all that out. And then again, boxed. This one I did box in because you see it's so tall, and I didn't want to have to, have this messed up from, any sort of lateral movement. The other direction, I kept all this stuff in place. Should have plenty of rigidity, side to side. But, they had to box that in and, ground and move all that other stuff. So that's just, I haven't even run any fuel line. That's just making room is all that work is. And so now coming to where I got to run the fuel filters, fuel pump, and so that takes up a ton of space. So when I put all these pieces together, so primary filter, fuel pump, and then secondary filter, the total length of all those things together, it's like almost 30 inches. And so then that causes its own set of problems. So I can't put it on this side. So this is the rear cab mount. There's not enough room there. So I'd either be splitting them up, like primary filter and fuel pump maybe could fit over here, run a little bit of line through, and then secondary fuel pump. So those could all, it could fit if I were to chop it up in a weird way. So I didn't want to do that. So this is the only sort of, straight-ish location that I had. And it takes up basically the whole space. And then the other problem that I ran into is these mounts, they are taller than the frame. And so, if I were to try to put this on here, these holes, they wouldn't even make it through the top. So the mounts that it came with are taller than the frame. I imagine, potentially people are mounting these on like unibody cars and then just like screwing them up into the bottom of the floor or something. I don't know. And then the mount for the fuel pump is yet even larger than the ones for the filter. And so, again, haven't even got to routing the fuel line, and I had to make these extension tabs that come off the bottom of the frame just so I have a place to mount them. And so that's just, again, not even running any fuel lines, still just prep. And then, there's a couple different ways that those could go on there. So the sort of, crazy fast way to do it would be to just use some self-tapping screws. And so drill a little pilot hole and then self-tapper, walk away. Problem with that is the self-tappers, they don't really hold real well over time. They'll wiggle loose. And then if you ever have to do any maintenance, which of course you're going to have to do maintenance, filters are a wear item. Those are going to go out. You take those in and out of the same hole, and then that hole gets watered out from the self-tappers, and then you've got another problem on your hands. And so more permanent solution would be to use nut certs in the frame, because I can't get to the backside. It'd be insane to try to cut through and get a captured nut on the inside of the frame. That'd be insane. And so nut certs on the top inside of the frame, and then drill a hole and then capture nut on the other side, which is what I got going on here. So already installed the nut cert, and then on this back side, I don't know if you'll be able to see that. It'd be a pain in the ass to get the camera down there. Maybe you can't see it, but down here, got a captured nut. I just welded into the hole on the bottom of that tab. And so all that work really just, at this point, I got the fuel pump mounted. And so the nut certs are pretty cool. They work well. They basically work like a rivet. And so you have this contraption here, and then it just screws in. And again, it just works like a big old rivet is what that boils down to. You got to make sure you set your depth. There's all kinds of settings based on, the size of the cert you're using and the frame rail, thickness, all that stuff. So it doesn't matter that I give you the specifications of this. You'll have to look up your own tool and everything to know exactly what it does. So that goes inside of here. And just like a rivet, it just squeezes down. And then you unscrew that piece, and then you're able to run your screw inside of that location. And because it functions like a rivet, you got this outside shoulder, and then the inside shoulder, it squeezes that down, and now you got a permanent location on the frame where you can run hardware through. Alright, so that's all fine and good, and then you're able to put this piece in there. Now you can see the amount of leeway I have is very, very light. There's just not a lot of wiggle room for the hardware in here. You'd be off by like less than, like a 16th is about as far off as you could be. So this is the sort of thing that you'd never measure for. Like, forget it, you're going to do it wrong, it's not going to be in alignment, all that other stuff. So if you're dealing with something that's this precise, and you can see, like, I can't really waller out that hole much more. Like, that top edge of it, it's so close to that hole that if I tried to enlarge that hole even a little bit, I'm going to blow through that. The other option would be to get a file and try to grind down a little bit. So maybe I got some room on the bottom edge, but if I just ran a bigger drill bit through here or a step bit or something, you'd blow through that top and you're going to have a mess. So definitely don't try to do both of them at the same time. That's just going to end badly. So then I can screw this on. Once that's tightened down finger tight, the final tightness is not going to be very different from that. Alright, so get that on there. Okay, and now you see I'm choosing to use AN line in between the filter and the pump. So instead of running like a small little piece of hard line, the AN line has a little bit of give on it. So even though the frame won't flex a whole lot, it can potentially move here a little bit. And then also the pump's going to vibrate. And so that's going to help isolate the filters from the pump. So the pump's going to have some movement to it and vibration and everything else. And this little bit of a line in between is going to help isolate that. You could potentially run them all as one giant unit. So you could, I wouldn't do it, but you could just run them all together into one thing, and then you'd just mount them all together as one unit. I wouldn't do it that way, but I've seen it. You can. But this little bit of line in between gives you some serviceability. You could take it out, and then you're going to get a little bit of isolation from the filters and the pump vibrating. All right, so that's tightened down there. And then I just used a soap pen and then sharpened the tip on it. And then take it off. And then I got my mark down there for exactly where that hole is. So instead of trying to measure it or anything else, I know I've already installed this one piece. That's exactly where that hole is going to be. I then mark where the second hole is going to be, and we should be good to go. So I got to drill that out, step it out to be a little bit larger, weld on a nut, repeat again and again. This is why shit takes 5 times as long, is because everything's super custom inside of here and just simple crap. Just I want to run the fuel system turns into a whole project. So FYI, you want to get into this stuff, it takes a lot longer than you think it does. So, all right, thanks. See you in the next one.